Yesterday's trade deadline saw some big-time moves with names like Aaron Gordon going from the Magic to the Nuggets, Victor Oladipo to the Rockets, to the Heat, and Rajon Rondo heading back to LA, only this time with the Clippers. Stephen A., who are the biggest winners coming out of the trade deadline?
Well, listen, for me, it's the Clippers. That's the first team that comes to my mind. Obviously, I can't ignore what Denver has done. They're right up there. The Chicago Bulls with Vucevic joining Zach LaVine. I think that's a big-time pickup with the Chicago Bulls, make no mistake about it. But the Clippers jump out to me because Rondo's leadership from the point guard spot was exemplary last year in the NBA Finals, and pretty much for the playoffs. That's number one. Number two, you know that's exactly what the Clippers need to take them some of that responsibility off of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Yes, they're both terrific. And they're terrific because they make things happen for themselves because they've had no one that creates opportunities for them. Patrick Beverley's a defensive ace. Reggie Jackson is a guy that looks for his own shot. He can handle the ball. He can shoot the ball. But he's not a quintessential prototypical point guard. He doesn't set up the action for you and take some of the responsibilities off of their shoulders. Everything is a challenge for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George because there's nobody setting the stage and running the show for them. And the fact that you have Rondo to do that for you is a huge, huge deal that I think helps them exponentially. And that's why it stands out in my mind, not to mention the fact that he's in LA and last year he won the championship with the Lakers. And so considering the fact that in all likelihood the Lakers will be your stiffest competition, the fact that you are incredibly familiar with what Frank Vogel wants to do, with what LeBron James likes to do, and you being Rajon Rondo, you know, that intellectual, cerebral ball player that he is, I think it's going to come to pass where he's going to make it exponentially tougher for the Los Angeles Lakers to knock off the Clippers because of his presence and also what he can teach Paul George and Kawhi Leonard about the Lakers in the event that they confront. It's not that they don't know how to play against them or whatever, but having somebody that is as smart as Rondo, who's a point guard, who just won the championship with them, same coach, same stars, I think that goes a long way.
I almost wanted to take the Clippers. I mean, I wanted to take them, but they had to give up Lou Williams to get Rondo. So I agree that Rondo could be a tipping point type player because they really needed him, which is why they pursued him in the offseason. But they had to give something up to get him that they could also use in Lou Williams. I think the biggest winner, therefore, is the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat picking up Oladipo. Now, you brought up he's not shooting it great this year, but for his career, he's a 79% free throw shooter and a 35% three-point shooter. Mm-hmm. That's good enough. Like, he can shoot it well enough, and he can get to the basket, and he can get his own shot, and he can set up teammates if he needs to. He's an all-around, excellent, like, combo backcourt player, scorer, whatever you want to call him. He's being added to Jimmy Butler, Goran Dragic, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn. Everyone I just described, same thing. They can get their own shot, they can shoot it, they can set up teammates. These are guys who are very difficult. None of them is James Harden or Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving, but all of them to different degrees, and we saw it with Hero in the playoffs, and we see it with Butler all the time, and especially in the playoffs, to different degrees can create defensive problems for the other team. That's 5 dudes I just mentioned. I didn't even mention Duncan Robinson, who can bomb, Bam, who's excellent, Iggy, who can still play. Adding Oladipo to that mix, I think there's now a big 4 in the Eastern Conference. They join the Bucks, the Sixers, and the Nets.
I get you. I just don't think you take into account the fact that you got an additional individual who's not 100% that's going to take the ball away from some of those guys that you mentioned. I think next year they'd be better than they would this year. And Oladipo will be better too.
All right, we'll leave it on that note. Fellas, because we got Dana White waiting for us on the other side. UFC president, he will be joining us. Lots of questions we need answered here. John Jones, Wednesday. Welcome back to First Take, coming to you live from the Seaport District at Pier 17, brought to you by Chase. A busy day before the NBA trade deadline yesterday as we saw some big moves, especially out west. The Clippers ship Sweet Lou to Atlanta for playoff Rondo. The Nuggets get Aaron Gordon from the Magic, and the Mavs get some shooting help for Luka, picking up J.J. Redick from New Orleans. Stephen A., it's the Wild West for a reason. Talk to me. How do you handicap the West race thus far?
I got to tell you something. I think the Clippers have gotten better. Obviously, Anthony Davis is the X factor. If he's healthy, the Lakers go back to the finals. If he's not, the Lakers go out maybe in the first round. It's that dramatic of a shift if Anthony Davis is not healthy. I would tell you that the Clippers will be right there. And I can't sleep on the Denver Nuggets. I've been thinking about Utah. I've been thinking about, obviously, the Portland Trail Blazers because of that backcourt with Dame and CJ and what they bring to the table. And I like the fact that they picked up Powell from Toronto as well, although I'm wondering how many of those mid-sized guys do you need, 6'5", 6'6", that kind of thing. I'm wondering about that, but nevertheless, it is what it is. What I would tell you is this. Denver, keeping Michael Porter Jr., having the Joker, having Jamal Murray, and adding Aaron Gordon to the mix. This dude, he can be physical, from a physicality perspective. He can be one of those individuals that's helping to guard LeBron and others. He's a legit 6'8". He's a Skywalker. He's averaged 14 this year, shooting about, 37% from three-point range, 43% from the field. He's a big-time addition to the Denver Nuggets, and I definitely think is an incredible plus that could put Denver over the hump potentially. It's something interesting. Remember, they had Jeremy Grant last year, who obviously was incredibly impressive and ended up getting that big contract from Detroit because of it. This guy, to me, is on that level, if not better, in terms of what he's going to be capable of doing for the Denver Nuggets. Not to mention the fact that he can help, because you had Millsap there for years, who's an age-old veteran, very, very savvy and can be on a roster, but nevertheless, that's what you had. This guy, Aaron Gordon, brings that to the table. So I would tell you right now, Utah can't be ignored, but neither can Denver. So I'm looking at Utah, the Clippers, and Denver battling. If the Lakers don't have Anthony Davis, one of those three, it's a crapshoot right there. And even if they have Anthony Davis, it's going to be a rough out. They're going to make it a rough out.
Well, Anthony Davis is the whole key, as you said.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, LeBron and AD are so good together. And no, they don't have Rondo anymore, and that may be an issue, but Schroeder's a good player. Think about what Denver did in last year's playoffs. They beat Utah in an all-time great first-round series. Yeah. And then they go on to knock off the Clippers, come from behind. And they were no match for the Lakers. I mean, Jokic and Murray were both playing at MVP level. And there's a difference between, MVP level, apparently, and what LeBron and AD can do. They were no match for the Lakers. But adding Aaron Gordon, especially if AD may not be 100%, Aaron Gordon, besides everything else, from everything I know about him, he's a good guy, right? He'll be good for the locker room and all that stuff.
Right.
But he's also, as you mentioned, a Skywalker who, so far this year, is finally hitting his threes at an acceptable level, even more, almost 38% from three. He's taken 4 of them a game. That really adds something because you have to remember when you look at this Nuggets roster, it's not just that they have Jamal Murray, who's normally an excellent player, maybe like an all-star level player. It's that they have playoff Rondo, playoff Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray, what he showed in the playoffs last year is he goes from maybe an all-star to an MVP when you need him most. You put that together with Jokic, a guy having one of the greatest offensive seasons ever, and you have Porter Jr. hitting shots, and now you have Aaron Gordon. That's a whole lot. And I would just also tell you, because we've been through all the teams, the West, you're swimming with sharks. You mentioned Denver, you mentioned Utah, Stephen A., the Lakers, the Clippers, the Blazers add Powell. The Mavs added J.J. Redick.
Yes.
The Mavs are my sleeper team in the playoffs anyway. Don't let
you know how I feel about J.J. Redick. We know what a fan I am of J.J. Redick. I hate the fact that the Sixers lost him. I always thought that the Sixers should have found a way to keep J.J. Redick, regardless of what you pointed out about his defensive liability. So I think that that's a big pickup for the Dallas Mavericks because you lost Seth Curry. And you need somebody, yep. and even though Seth Curry, could arguably a better pure shooter per se, you know what? And he's a little bit bigger, or at least he appears to be. Here's the thing: J.J. Redick's ability to move without the basketball is what you cannot minimize because you got to have eyes in the back of your head watching everywhere he is because you still can't leave him open. And getting back to Denver, I don't even understand, Max, how there was even a discussion as to whether or not the Denver Nuggets would consider trading Michael Porter Jr. I will remind everybody, this brother,
he's offensively
this
special.
Brother is listen, we know his injury history, but this dude right here is averaging 16 a game. He shoots 52% from the field. He shoot like 42, 43% from three-point range.
Yep.
I mean, What? And he just gets started. He's 22.
Yep. Listen,
I like going on Michael Porter.
The only reason he wasn't drafted higher is because of the potential injury, because of the injury history and everything coming in.
And it said something when the great Jerry West passes up on you twice because the Clippers had the 12th and the 13th pick in that draft, and they didn't take him.
But as long as he's
Jerry
healthy,
West doesn't usually miss.
As long as he's healthy, that offense is just going up and up and up.
Michael Porter's special. Yeah. I like Michael Porter. I want
to say this about the Mavs too. The way that team is constructed with Luka, if Porzingis stays healthy, now you add Redick. They have got